Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're here first for a brief special meeting to approve an election warrant. Ed?
Okay. This is approval of an election warrant for calling a special municipal election to be held on Tuesday, June 12, 2018, for the special school referendum and recommendations from the City Council, from the City Clerk, Registrar of Voters, on actions necessary to conduct said election. At which point I will turn it over to the City Clerk, who knows how to read these things a heck of a lot better than I do.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I apologize for being late. I just flew in from the polls, which I'm going back to. So item number 1, approval of the election warrant calling for a special municipal election to be held on Tuesday, June 12, 2018, for the special school referendum and recommendations from the City Clerk, Registrar of Voters on actions necessary to conduct said election. Requested action. Be it ordered by the City Council that the election warrant be issued for the special municipal election to be held on Tuesday, June 12, 2018, for the purpose of voting for the special school referendum and to approve the recommendations from the City Clerk, Registrar of Voters on actions necessary to conduct the special municipal election. A, that the hours for acceptance of registration in person only prior to the June 12th election, as required by Maine Revised Statutes Title 21A, Section 122, 6A2, be set at 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. May 23rd through June 11, 2018. B, that the names of those persons who register during the closed session for registration shall be recorded in accordance with MRSA Title 21, Section 122, subsection 7B. And C, pursuant to Title 21A, Section 759, subsection 7, absentee ballots shall be processed centrally at 4 p.m. and any and all remaining shall be processed at 8 p.m. if necessary.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilor Cloutier, seconded by Councilor Ray. Questions from the council? To the public? Back to the council. Councilor Marcotte?
Not questions, but I do have a few comments. The reason I'll be voting against this tonight, maybe a little choppy here, just written down a bunch of notes late this afternoon. It's an added layer of government. I believe that there are questions from certain school committee membership personnel on the regional school committee. The contract as written is up in the air in the minds of some of the members of the school committee. And this appears to be a rush at this point to secure the $200,000 that would come with it. Regionalization hasn't worked so well with the consolidated jails a few years ago, so if, you can imagine how that has worked out. And that's where this could end up. We may lose some local control in the process. Recently, Lewiston and Auburn just voted down a consolidation/merger. And we have seen what the state does with revenue sharing. So whatever the promises are now for funding can change over time. Today's promises may be tarnished by future legislatures, as we have seen before, because one legislature cannot bind a future one with respect to funding. So that's my listing of reasons why we're rushing at this point. Maybe at a later point, I'd be happy to vote in favor of putting it out to referendum, but there's too many questions currently unanswered, and the fact that the school board was as split as it has been. They actually turned it down at one point, only to come back and with one or two people changing their votes.
Councilor Ray?
So to speak to the school committee side as the city council representative to the school committee, last night was a really great debate about this, sending this to referendum. We talked a lot about our desire to have a school committee member serve on this board of directors for the regional service center, and that really helped us feel that we could trust in this process. The idea is not to regionalize all of our services. It's focusing on areas that Lewiston already does well and helping Auburn, RSU 16, and Turner. I don't remember what their MSAD.
Is it Poland?
Poland, thank you. Sorry. It's been a long day. Helping them gain some of the services that we already have. Lewiston will be the kind of administrative unit for this centralized service. And if Lewiston turns it down, then it will be Auburn. So they can continue without us, and we could join at a later date as well. So we really want to hear what citizens think about this, and so sending it to referendum is the best way to do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions with the knowledge that I have.
Councilor Beam.
I like the idea of trying this. I wasn't in favor of the city consolidation, but I think this is a whole different thing. Unfortunately, they come back to back and might get confused with each other, but this is just a way of cooperating together to get better education, hopefully. I think it's worth a try. But I did have a question which people may have who are watching, and are we going to be moving children around among the, did that ever come up when you were discussing this? Like, do you know?
Yeah, so we didn't discuss the particulars of that. So the first time it was voted on, there was also this additional grant that worked with children 3 to 5, and that might have involved that component. That is out of the way, not part of the discussion anymore, which I think is why it was reconsidered last night and voted in favor of. I can't speak to the exact specifics of it, but I think if that's a concern, I can definitely represent that to the school committee.
Before we go to the election, that would be a good thing to know, I think.
We can
parents
definitely
would
get an
worry
answer
that
on that, I'm sure.
children might be being bused to other municipalities, which they're both nice municipalities, but you don't want to see your children on a bus all
Right,
the time.
being driven all
If they
around.
don't have to be.
Yep. We can ask the superintendent for clarification on that, for sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Pengill.
I'd also be voting no on this. I share a lot of the sentiments with Councilor Marcotte. But I have an issue with adding more hands into Lewiston school education system that is not Lewiston. If Auburn wants to take the lead on this and merge with other communities for their education system, please, by all means, do. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We've seen this not work in other communities across the state, and again, I personally feel there's issues with our education system, and I don't feel merging it as it exists now is going to better what we get out of our education system. So I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Councilor Cludier.
So just 2 quick things. As Councilor Marcotte pointed out, the school committee voted on this for the second time last night. I just want to be clear about sort of why that happened, and a big part of that was that more information was brought back to the school committee last night so that they could vote on it a second time. And then secondly, I just want to be clear for the folks at home that our vote tonight is not on whether or not we are in favor of the regionalization consolidation. What we are voting on is whether or not to send it to the voters, which are 2 very different questions. So I just want to be clear that this council has no vote on this other than as private citizens when it goes to referendum, if and when it goes to referendum. Thanks.
Call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
No.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes?
Ward 7.
No.
Motion passed by a vote of 5 to 2.
Okay, we'll now move into a workshop, and item number 1 on the workshop agenda will be a brief presentation from the Raise Up Housing Cooperative, who just recently was the council selection for the Spirit of America Award.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having us this evening. And of course, thank you very much for the award that we received a few weeks ago, and for your support of Home Dollars to do the project that we'd like to report back to you on this evening. My name is Craig Saddlemeyer. I'm the staff person for the Raise Up, and I've also lived in one of the Raise Up buildings since 2008. I'll let the other folks introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Stas. I'm the current president of the Raise Up. I have been living for 5 years in the same building as Craig, actually, on Maple Street, the oldest one. And I'm an interpreter in the community, so working with schools, hospitals. So I go a lot in, I know the neighborhood pretty well because I go home. I do home visits with nurses and family advocates or teachers.
And my name is Shad Massoud. I'm currently the treasurer of the Raise Up Housing Cooperative, and I'm also a community member. I haven't lived in the Raise Up buildings myself, but I've lived in downtown Lewiston. I'm currently a nurse at one of the hospitals here, and also see the touch on the issues with citizens in the city and see how it affects their health. And we're happy to be here, and thank you for allowing us to have the time to speak to you.
And I'll just briefly recognize we have some other Raise Up members in the room as well. Maybe if Raise Up folks want to raise their hand and be recognized. Cool, thank you. Okay. First half of our presentation is about what we did on Pierce Street, and then the second half is going to be looking more towards the future, highlighting some issues that we're very interested in and that we think council and policymakers should be interested in general with regards to housing and our community. So what we did with the home funds was we renovated 141 Pierce Street, which is a 9-unit apartment building. 6 of the units were occupied when we acquired it. Some of the reasons that we liked it, in addition to the fact that we thought it had good bones, that it was worth investing in, was that it was central and visible in the neighborhood. It's not right on the corner, but it's very close to the corner, so you can see it from a lot of different angles. And we thought a project there would just have a really good impact on the surrounding neighbors as well. And it came with a commercial space, which was not something we were necessarily thought we should be looking for, but it happened to come with this opportunity, and we did a lot of good things with that we'll talk about a little bit later. So we did a pretty significant renovation. It was not down to the studs per se, but the bathrooms received the biggest facelift. So you have a one before and one after photo there. Pretty much all of the bathrooms got a similar extent of renovation. We also did a lot of work in the kitchens, new heating system, almost 100% new electrical, and some lead renovation, and some work on the porches. So here are some images inside some of the apartments. There was actually some underutilized space in this building, as I think a lot of folks know. Back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of our buildings that were originally constructed as large apartments for large families started getting subdivided. And there were parts of this building that had been subdivided, and then the city said, no, you can't do that, you're exceeding the density standards. And so parts of the building were just left untouched for many years, even though it was good, if it was renovated again, could be livable space. So with this, we were actually able to restore some of the units, or at least one unit, to its historical layout, and change it from just a 1-bedroom to a 4-bedroom unit with a second bathroom, which is that one in the upper left-hand corner. Where that corridor is, there was a wall when we bought it. And the lilac kitchen in the upper right is an example of a personal touch that one of the Raise Up members was very excited to customize their home. Residents were involved, as is the nature of our project from day one. Here are 2 active members who were living in the building when we purchased it, and they're putting up the Raise Up sign on the building. The one story I like to share is on the day after we closed on the building, we did a orientation with folks. And a number of the residents didn't know each other very well, were kind of nervous to attend a meeting and speak, and many of them didn't know each other's names at all. And then within 6 months, everyone was on a first-name basis with each other, and some of the folks were best friends. Some of the people that didn't know each other were best friends, and no one was, everyone basically got to stay in the building. Some people have since moved out, but it wasn't a result of the project itself. It was for, other personal reasons. So no one was displaced, and some of those folks who moved still come back because of the close friendships that they formed with the people in the building. Here is a before image of both properties. So the apartment building on the right, you see the commercial building on the left, which had, for as long as I've lived in the neighborhood, which is since 2005, that building has looked like that. And then here's the after. So pretty big improvement. The commercial space, that was all private funding that we used to renovate it. It serves as office and meeting space for the co-op itself in the rear, and most of the building is dedicated to the Somali Bantu Community Association, who uses it as effectively a community center. They provide many different services to their members, including family services, cultural education for the youth, and their biggest program is doing farming. They lease a number of different pieces of land, and they help their members farm, which is what they know how to do, grow food for their families and also grow food as a business.
And it's a revenue for us, an added revenue that wasn't planned in the beginning.
To help sustain the property, correct. So some other, and here we're just kind of highlighting some of kind of the peripheral things that came from doing this project. So in addition to the improvements we made inside the building, we obviously sort of contributed to the beautification of the streetscape with the commercial space, and now we're putting the finishing touches on a new vegetable garden on the corner of Pierce and Birch that is called the Heart and Soil Vegetable Garden. This has been a really collaborative effort that actually started with surveying residents in the neighborhood and finding out what they wanted to see done with the lot. The vegetable garden was the most popular idea, and so we pursued that with some grant money from Healthy Neighborhoods, and we'll be celebrating that later this week, finally starting to put soil in the raised beds, and they should be ready for growing this summer.
Craig, I went by today, there was quite a few, how many raised beds are there?
There'll be 21 raised beds when it's done. So now I'm gonna pass the mic to Vanessa.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody is invited. So Thursday, 3 to 5, we're gonna fill the raised bed, right? Mm-hmm. So the past year or 2 years, we've been working on our strategic growth plan, and after many meetings, many conversations, we decided that our goal in the next 5 years would be to double our size. So we'd like to have 30 members. That means 30 units, because per unit you have only one shareholder. But that could represent 100 residents, because it's the members with their families. And we would also really like to increase the staff people and add a second one, just because the sheer number, the sheer volume is gonna need it. But also, some people can, one staff can work more on buildings and the development, more of the physical aspect, and then more or less, and then one more tenants relationship, growth, participation in the movement of cooperatives in general in Maine. So voila. So yeah, at the core of creating the Raise Up Housing Co-op, I think, is our belief that housing is a human right. I feel like the house is where everything starts. Like we at the end of the day, we go back there in the morning, we leave from there, and, a good, affordable, safe living space is fundamental for living a good life, and also, that's depending on the location. I'll just read the thing. The location influences education, employment, healthcare, the connection that you have in the community, and the opportunity to accumulate wealth or at least live decently. If I can just, 5 years ago, I was restarting my life from scratch, more or less, and I really was blessed in finding the co-op and being able to move in. And I was a single mom with 2 kids, and because first of all, it provided me with a safe and healthy place. I didn't have to worry about lead. I didn't have to worry about. Like Craig said, we know our neighbor by name. If we need something, we can always reach out to them. So that creates a completely different environment, and also finance-wise, because the rent that we're paying is so much below the fair market price. The opportunity to accumulate wealth, or at least to rebuild a sound economic or a sound financial life is a big plus for housing, living in a housing co-op. So the bigger picture right now, we live in a rather hostile political landscape for affordable houses, because on the country level, there's 7.2 million people that don't have access to affordable housing. Maine has a shortage of 16,000 affordable homes. And at the Lewiston Housing Authority, there's over 2,000 people that are on the waiting list, so hoping to move in either in the public housing, or received or receive Section 8. So that means that the needs are great and real, and as a nation we respond to only 25% of them. That means like 3 people out of 4 don't have access to this fundamental right that is housing. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I have the opportunity to go in many of these houses. With all the fires, and the city rightly so condemning the dangerous housing stock. Right now in Lewiston, there's a reduced supply of housing, of buildings. There's a very low home ownership in the downtown of Lewiston. The neighborhoods are pretty segregated by race and money. How do you call that? Class. Thank you. Right now, one thing that is happening is because of that low vacancy, the rents are increasing. It's 2 to 6 times the inflation rate. So there's an example here of $800 apartment for a double occupancy, and if you see the picture, I mean, it doesn't seem like to be the most I don't know, luxurious place. And I really think that we have really, that housing is also an issue of you know, people will choose to stay in Lewiston, like brilliant people that have good lives if they have good housing, but there's, you know, the lack of, you know, like landlords that don't put heat or don't take care of the bed bugs problems or any problems, then that I think that is pushing. I have seen people, like really smart, dedicated people or citizen being, you know, leaving Lewiston. So, yeah, and then the cuts to assistance program is a good segue into you that talking more about the problems and the future.
Would you like me to leave it on this slide or go to the next one?
No, we can go to the next slide. I think in our work over the last 4 or 5 years, we have gained some knowledge as to how Lewiston is positioned in regards to other communities in Maine, and kind of understanding the boundaries with which we're working in, and we see Lewiston Auburn kind of on the upswing, coming out of some very unsafe and abandonment issues, and where we would applaud the city council for taking some measures to kind of stabilize housing in Lewiston in terms of safety and through the lead funds. But on the other side, the trajectory we could see is more investment in the city that's not checked, or that isn't holding to some certain principles, and that could lead to more expensive housing and maybe even excessive housing where we have many empty units that aren't being filled, and that would increase property value and then kind of head us into this bubble and kind of repeat a cycle of divestment and the city, city taking on more burdens. So we can move on to the next slide. We would, we encourage the city council to support many different issues that they're probably going to see over this year, and we also want to thank you for supporting the Hartley block and the $1.3 million Choice Neighborhood Grant. But when you look at proposals in the future, we encourage you guys to ask these questions to make sure that they're inclusive of all groups, that the projects include something that's healthy and safe and that's affordable for everyone, and that there's a portion that's accountable to the community. It's not just a disbursement of funds and then hoping that results will follow. We hope that people who take money can report back to you guys with successes and kind of also show you the challenges that they experience from when they take on projects. And some local steps, we hope that you support the new affordable housing development, and that's mixed income, that allows for a stable workforce to live close by to the the businesses that we want to attract to our downtown and surrounding communities. We want to we hope to see strengthening of the code enforcement, either through positions or helping them fund programs that allow them to enforce the code that's there. And you'll probably see these terms coming up in the near future: the National Housing Trust Fund, if you're not already familiar with them, the home and CDBG monies that are coming through this community, the Choice Neighborhoods Grant Program, any rental assistance programs, and public housing. They're all up in the air with how HUD is restructuring and kind of considering different budgetary measures. So you as counselors are in a great position to advocate for Lewiston through our elected officials, Representative Polican and Senator Collins. And I don't know if there's another slide after that. Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
Yeah. And I'll hand it back to Craig.
Yeah, that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer questions or happy to let you move on with your
Counselor
work.
Wright?
Yeah.
could we just get a copy of this presentation? I'd love the slide that Shad was talking about on the tenants that we should be looking for as we embark on projects. That'd be really great to have in our toolkit.
Yep.
Thanks.
Councilor Petgill?
Have you guys taken a look at the comprehensive plan at all? Because I know that speaks to a lot of things that affect affordable housing, like density, reduction of sprawl, public transportation, and stuff like that. And those are some key issues. Yeah, you guys do a fantastic job. So hats off to you guys. But I think help in pushing those other issues will go a long way towards increasing affordable housing and the factors that people don't really associate with what increases rents and causes things to not be affordable. But again, hats off to you guys. Good job.
Thank you.
Councilor Cludier?
So I missed the meeting where you guys got the award, so I just wanted to personally say congratulations.
Greg missed it too, don't worry.
It's funny that you bring up the comp plan, Councilor Pettengill, because Craig was on the think tank that sort of helped put that together over the course of 3 years with me. So I think he has a inner knowledge of that that most people probably don't. So thank you for that work as well. And I just think that you guys are a real gem in our downtown, and I appreciate the work you do a lot.
Councilor Lyson?
Yeah, I'd like to echo the sentiments of the councilors too, and thank you for your work. And I think what really gives me joy is the fact that you've had such strong support from the council, bipartisan, whatever, because of the way you've done things and the need for this type of housing. So thank you for what you do, and how, if we can help and support you in any way, continue to ask. So good luck. Thank you.
Councilor Marcotte?
I have a question. How many properties total?
We have 3 apartment buildings and then 1 commercial building, and we have 15 apartments.
Okay, and just trying to picture in my mind the third one. There's Maple Street, Pierce Street.
We have 2 buildings on Maple Street right
on
next to each
Maple.
other,
Okay.
and then the Pierce Street property that we just showed you.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen the property on Pierce Street since you've done it, because I didn't click with me until you had to zoom out with the commercial property. And I remember that commercial property.
Yeah.
It looked like that in 1980 when I was going to Driver's Ed there.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. It's been a lot of things over the...
And I remember the demolition of the building on the corner. So it's a really nice improvement to the area.
Thank you.
Councilor Beam?
I just wanted to pass on that my mother grew up in this area, or actually near St. Peter's Church, and she just had such a wonderful childhood. It was a great neighborhood, and she just speaks highly of the fact that she was able to play with children with all ethnic, how do you say that? Ethnicities. And they grew up and were friends as grown-ups too. And so her father owned one of the buildings that they lived in. But so I'm really happy to see this going on. I think it's a great place to live.
Thank you.
Councilor LaJoy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo everything that was said on the City Council here this evening, and I want to thank you tremendously for the efforts you put forward. There's more individuals like yourselves that stand at the helm and move different areas of the city forward. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you, folks.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Kathy, I have a signed election warrant for you. Oh yeah, she wanted that. Okay, so now we were going to move into a discussion on our taxi cab zoning and charging system. This actually came about, I heard from some users, and then within 2 days I heard from 2 cab companies. So I figured it was time to get us together and learn how our taxi cabs run. I'm not a user of the system, so I didn't know. And Ed's put together some stuff for us, and Ed can give us some background, and I know there's at least 3 companies here ready to speak on various issues, so Take it away, Ed.
Okay, included in your packet is some information both on the City of Lewiston's system for regulating taxi cab charges, which is basically a zone system. Also included Bangor and Portland, which are metered, where there's a charge. Usually there's an initial charge. In Portland's case, it's based on 1/10 of a mile, and then a charge for every 10th thereafter. In Bangor's, it's 1/6 of a mile for the initial meter flip, and then a charge for every additional 1/6 of a mile. Our system is a little complicated if you're not familiar with it, so the easiest way to explain it is to look at the colored map that was provided in your packet. The city's broken into 5 zones. So when you get in a cab, you start with a charge of $4. And as you cross zone lines, so if you go from zone 1 to zone 2, it goes to $5. If you cross another line, it goes to $6, so on and so forth, with one additional variation, which is, if you look at the map, you'll see slightly different blues, reds, and greens. As you pass from one area to the next, there's an extra 50-cent charge. So if you start downtown and you drive into zone 2, let's say on Webster or Pleasant, and then you turn left and go a certain distance, you may pick up another 50-cent charge. So that's how our system works, as opposed to a meter system, which is basically based on a charge per mile with an additional upfront charge that really is intended to compensate operators for very short trips. So, you know, if you're doing a grocery run.
And if you go from zone 2 in Lewiston to zone 2 in Auburn, add 2 zones together, it's double price.
Okay. So Auburn is also a zone system, and they have a map in there. Their map is much more colorful than ours is, because they've got 7 zones as opposed to our 5. This has come up, as I understand, before, although it probably hasn't been discussed in many years. But the historic argument here is that this can be a confusing system for users of cab service. I think Washington, D.C. is always the famous example that people have seen. I think they've gone to meters in Washington, but for years they were in a zone system. We used to go down for an annual conference with some people from elected officials around the state, and you get 3 cabs to go from the hotel to a restaurant, and each 3 that followed one right after the other, each one would have a different charge. Unless you're willing to sit there and study the map and figure it out, you didn't really know. I don't know if that's as much of a problem here, given that so many of the passengers are repeat users. It's not like we have a huge tourist economy or visitors economy, but it can be confusing. The argument against it is it does require an additional investment on the part of the cab companies to purchase and install the equipment. I don't know what that runs. I suspect somebody here in the audience probably does. And there's also a little bit of overhead associated with it in terms of the meter has to be checked by the state to make sure it's accurate and things like that. So that basically are the 2 different systems. I will warn you all, when I was going to school, I was a cab driver in Dayton, Ohio, for Yellow Cab. So I got used to the system, and we had a meter system. You had a little button to push for extras, and if people got more, when you take somebody to the grocery store for $1, and they come out with 22 bags of groceries, you can start getting 10 cents extra per bag. So there's all kinds of little twists to the whole system. But that's basically the 2 systems that exist. I'll also point out that I believe there are probably some places that have meters that don't regulate the charges. They just require that the charges be posted by the cab company, usually on the exterior door, so that people will know what the charges are as they get into the cab. The whole issue of regulating cab charges, it can be controversial and difficult. It's been pretty stable recently because gas prices haven't gone outrageously high, but there have been issues in the past with the price of gas increasing. The clerk and somebody else has a little bit of flexibility to adjust charges because of fuel prices. So that's a little bit of the background on the whole system.
Okay, I think unless anyone has a really burning question, I'll turn it over to the cab companies to voice some concerns, questions. Councilor Cloutier?
So can we just get, before Ed gave the overview, you had said that you had heard about this issue, and I'm just sort of wondering what that
I've heard from
meant.
users of the system that the pricing is really inconsistent.
Okay.
And then Mr. Patterson reached out to me about Uber and a couple other things, and Mr. Furland had stopped me one day as I was dumping my cardboard, and he's my landlord. And some issues with the zoning system.
Okay.
So I figured it was time to get together.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Okay, and with that, we will start. If anyone in the audience would like to speak, come to the table. You can go to the podium. Please state your name, your address for the council. Also, whichever cab company you may represent, and any questions, concerns, or ideas you have.
My name is Mike Patterson. I work for LA Cab. Issues with Uber. We're pretty well regulated, and Uber isn't regulated at all. They do the same job, and it doesn't seem fair that they can just come in here and push us around. I'm not sure what can be done about that. And second is, seems to be a free-for-all as far as people that aren't even licensed, going up to Walmart, picking people up, posting on Facebook, we're a cab service, but they're not. And nobody seems to be regulating that. So,
Any thoughts on the metering system or the zone system while you're
I think it would bankrupt some of the people if you went to a meter system. I think zones is much better. I think a lot of the low-income people can't afford to go to a meter system. And other than that, that's it.
Thank you, Mike. Ed, could you speak to the Uber or the unlicensed cabs?
Yeah, as I understand it, the state has exempted our ability to regulate ride-sharing companies, so we cannot adopt any regulatory scheme that would govern them.
Mr. Mayor, I can take the unlicensed cabs. This is the first comment that I've heard from it about the unlicensed cabs. Certainly, should any unlicensed cabs be noted and recognized, then we would certainly ask that it be brought to the attention of the city clerk's office. We do the licensing for the cabs. Let us know. We will notify the police department. They're obviously out in the field. We're not. They will take a look at that. We'll try to get the information and track that down. But you're absolutely correct. In the city of Lewiston, for a vehicle to operate a licensed taxi company, limos, there are some exemptions because there are some folks who operate medical transport if they're taking you from appointment to appointment, but that's lined up through the doctor's office. There are some exemptions for that as well. But please touch base. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. 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 Okay. Yeah. Let us know. We'll look into it and we'll work with the police department to have them try to track them down and we'll get them licensed because all that is regulated by the city, both the driver and the vehicle, as you know. Yep. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott Ferland from City Cab. I'm for the meters. That's why I'm here tonight. I think it's just a fair way for people to ride and easier for cab companies to charge. You could take a cab, the same location, and get the same price. Doesn't matter the company. As far as bankrupt, I think they're only a couple $100 a piece. They basically plug and play. I've owned City Cab for 5 or 6 years, and dispatchers, even a dispatcher, it's hard to learn the zones, and it's just a complicated system the way it is, for sure.
Have you actually priced the meters, Scott?
Yeah, they're a couple $100 a piece.
Okay. How many cabs are you running?
I think we're running 8 or 10 of them.
Mike? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Councilor Lyson.
Mr. Ferland, you mentioned cost, and you felt low-income people couldn't afford to go with meters.
Right, in a meter, if you stop at a red light or, somebody take a long way.
Right. The 3-minute wait for an extra charge every 3 minutes. Right. But all in all, do you feel, Mr. Ferland, that they're cost comparative?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't see anybody going to the zone system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's going to meters, and It's a lot easier for everybody. Dispatchers, I mean, you hire a dispatcher, it's like, how do you train them? The zone system takes forever. And even the dispatchers that we have, I bet the rates will vary because the adding 50 cents or pulling $1 or adding $2, it's crazy.
Councilor Ray?
Sorry, to clarify on Mr. Patterson's point, as a follow-up to Councilor License, when you said meters might bankrupt some people, I interpreted that as companies, as riders. Okay. I was like, what is happening? Thank you very much.
Councilor Marcotte?
Using the zone system, if you were living a quarter mile on one side and you needed to just go 500 feet over the other side, you'd be probably paying a whole lot more than a metered system.
Oh, that's correct. The zone system is absolutely ridiculous. You could go 2 houses down and it would be 10 times what it would cost with a meter. I mean, it's not good for the riders at all, and it's not good for the cab companies with the zone system.
And as far as where the cab companies, I'm trying to look at this map and how it's laid out, and cab companies may have a base of operation anywhere in the city, and they have to get to a certain place as well.
That's correct. We're based right in Zone 1, so it works out real good.
Is everybody based in Zone 1?
No.
In Auburn?
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking, if the cab has to travel several zones just to get to the person, there's no charge for that to the person, right?
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah.
Any other questions for Scott while he's up there? Thanks, Scott.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Felix Jimenez from 5-Star Taxi. I've been running this in the city for almost 10 years. And definitely the sound system is completely confused. I even worked, like I said, for 10 years, and I'm the Moslo dispatcher. Hire dispatcher with the sounds is ridiculous. No way you can. Because there's so many confusion about it. Obvious, I do for 10 years. I'm trying to do my best way where I can do, but even still learn. So in that case, I'll be going for meetings. That'd be I think, the best option for the companies, but everything depends whether they be. That's the only word I can say.
How many cabs are you running, sir?
7.
7. Thank you.
My name is Ron Goulet. I'm the owner of Tri-Town Taxi. I run one car. I've been driving cab in this town off and on since 1975. My first cab driving experience was because of a recession. I worked construction. Things slowed down. Had to find work, so grabbed a cab driving job. And off and on since then, every recession, there I was back with cab again till the recession was over with and back to construction. I've owned Tri-Town Taxi approximately 6 years now. I drove for the previous owner for 3 years. And I have a total understanding of the zoning. It really is no problem with me. One problem I did have with the zoning years back was I got a map from City Hall, and it was completely unreadable. It was very blurry. It was extremely small writing and everything. You needed a major magnifying glass to see it with, and by the time you enlarged it, it was already blurry, so it wasn't readable. So for a person that didn't understand, there would be no understanding. I have no problem with the zoning whatsoever. My problem regarding meters is that I've spoken with people from other areas that do have meters, and they explained to me that using meters in this area would be very bad, simply because the road systems are in bad shape and meters are very susceptible to damage from vibration, impact, things of the sort. I myself spend big money on repairs of my car because of the road systems in this area. I can't, it's $4,000 or $5,000 a year, easy. It varies, but it's in that category. And it's because of all the potholes and everything. So meters are going to be continuously breaking down, and I'm told they're very pricey to repair. So, and there may be a possibility of leasing a meter. I don't know. That would insure it, and it could be repaired on a lease basis. I don't like the idea of meters. I picked up a guy from New York City. He was a corporate executive type, briefcase, very well-to-do. He asked me if his ride was going to cost him $40. I started laughing. He said 30. I laughed more. He said 20. I laughed more. He said 10. I laughed more. By that time, we had gotten from the Greyhound bus station to Bates College, 1 mile. I said, that'll be $4.50. I got 50 cents on there, I'm sorry, but, and it should actually be a straight 4. So he looked at me and he just cracked up, and for 10 minutes in the back seat of my car, he went hysterical. He couldn't believe it was $4.50. He told me in New York City, because of the meters, he had no idea what it would cost him, and he was worried it would cost him more than $40 because he didn't want to be caught in a cab over, with short of money to pay for the fare. I guess they aren't very friendly there. So that's my thing on meters, and as far as the zoning and everything is concerned, I really have no problem with it. I would just suggest better zoning maps so that people can really see them clearly, and what you got there is great. That's totally understandable. It really is. What's that? Yeah. Oh, do you? I haven't had a zoning map in years, so.
Yeah, you're well, come into the office tomorrow. We'll print you a new one because they've all been redone by our computer
The
department.
ones years ago weren't very good.
I
gotta
agree.
tell you.
They were
That was
bad.
during the days of the black and white Xerox machine.
Yes, we've redone them. So come on in and we'll hook you up. Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron. Okay. Any further discussion on the council? Or do we take this and digest and possibly come up with some options? How many cab companies do we license in the city?
We license 6, but 2 of them, there's some ownership structure regarding the 5-star. You have 2 separate licensed businesses, but 1 owner. So 5 primary owners. Yeah.
And all but 1 are here today, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Ed?
Yeah, a couple just quick comments. Obviously, if we do think seriously about changing, we should probably coordinate that with Auburn so that people are on the same system. So I'll mention that. And I would be curious to hear from people very quickly. Don't have to do it today, but at some point, whether they would prefer a system where the city sets the charge or where they're allowed to set their own. And if they have, as we go through, if they have some recommendations on what they think would be reasonable fares for if we decide to actually set them and regulate them.
So how is it set now? Is it city set now, or is it?
Yes, the city, this is a part of the city ordinance.
Okay, thanks.
And how burdensome is this for staff, this system, Ed? One sec, Ron.
It's not very burdensome at all. The major part of it is just doing the licenses for both the drivers and the operators. The cab inspections are done by the city of Auburn, and we kind of split the work between the 2 communities.
On a slow day, like right now, summer's coming along, Uber will drop their prices to a rate that none of us could afford, and their drivers do it. Their drivers get 80% of their pay. As an owner of a company, after my expenses, I'm looking at 30% at best. These drivers, any drivers in here are basically being paid 30%. The company gets like 70%, and the expenses come out of that, so the company's only looking at like 20 or 30% or less. An Uber driver enjoys 80%. I talked with an Uber driver today, and I've talked with several in the past. They tell me that their insurance and their registration is taken care of by Uber. They have vacation land license plates. Every other commercial unit in this town has, including the hearses, has license plates to go with their occupation. This Uber car was plastered with Uber signs with vacation land plates. I looked at him when he was going by me real slow, and I said, boy, your insurance isn't very good. He came around and gave me a bunch of crap about it. And I said, hey, look, guy, I got $300,000 per passenger. It's required by the city of Lewiston, Auburn. I said, it's kind of pricey, you know. And I said, I'll bet yours is nowhere near that. He said, well, Uber takes care of my insurance. I said, I don't think so. I said, do you have commercial insurance? He said, Uber takes care of it. I said, I don't think so, because his license plate's a vacation land. He doesn't have the insurance. If you got the for hire license plate or coach or commercial or anything, you got the insurance. If you got vacation land license plates, as a public transportation person charging people for rides, you are I won't say you, but the individual would be committing fraud on the registration bureau, the insurance company, and exempt to any laws regarding the cities. They're going and insuring their car, and they aren't telling their insurance company that it's a business. If they did, it would be different. They would say, there are 5 insurers in New England that insure for the kind of thing I'm talking about. And if anybody gets in trouble with those insurers, they are out of business, period. That's what happened to City Cab. That's how Scott got a hold of it. The owner had too many accidents. The insurance companies dropped her. There's only 5, and she was done. So he picked it up off me. I was working for her at the time. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. And as far as the zoning is concerned, I would strongly suggest adding $1 to the zone instead of a $4 zone, make it a $5 zone all the way through the board. Because, minimum wage going up to like $10+ an hour, heading for 15. I don't think the zoning rates have been changed in like 10 years. So us guys are all driving on 10-year back pay from 10 years ago. I'm barely surviving as a cab company. I got expenses that far exceed what I'm bringing in most of the time. It's a tough business. It really is. And as far as the 50 cents per passenger thing is concerned, I'd suggest that would go to $1. Same thing with a trunk. And now we can make some money. That's the way I see it. But I've said my piece, and thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments while we're here?
Well, I agree with the raise. 10 years is something.
Any other questions from the council? All right. I guess we'll go to work and discuss this at staff and also bring it to the City of Auburn, and we'll get back to you. Thanks for coming up. And with nothing else on the agenda, we're done. Unless Kristen wants to say something.
I just wanted to remind folks that the polls are open at Longley to vote on the school referendum, on the school budget, until 8 p.m.
Now?
We're done.